Welcome to My Best Practice. In this short video, I'm going to quickly explain and walk you through how you can effectively use our note-taking features. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to open a note. So we'll do that by creating a new appointment. So let's say I'm going to create an appointment here. Select the client. I can scroll down and pick Kevin Stewart from here, or I can simply start entering his name into the search bar. And it's going to automatically pre-populate the CPT code and service that I used last time, assuming it's the same and the same price as the last service. Of course, at any point I can say, oh, this time I've raised the rate, or this time the rate is actually lower, and I can simply change it and then click Add Appointment. And then next week it will assume that this is the correct default setting, and then of course if I need to customize it I can make those changes. So I add the appointment, and then that's going to be put on the calendar for 5 o'clock. I click on it. It says Create Note. So I simply select the green bar, Create Note, and it's going to open a session note. And this is what our cognitive behavioral therapy session note, the CBT note, looks like. There are other options. If you want a general SOAP note, you can select a psychotherapy note. Or if you want just a big box, you can select the general note. But I'm going to walk you through the CBT note because it has a few features that the others don't. So from this page, what you'll see displayed is going to be the client's name, the date, time of service, the services that are provided with the CPT code, and of course all of this is also customizable, but by default you'll have a lot of the most common options already pre-populated for you. Today's service charge, and then the balance, what's owed from previous sessions. And if I want to pay, collect payment at any point, I can simply click Pay Now and it'll come up, or I can come up to this quick button and take payment here, and it will allow me to enter any information, check, cash, or take payment automatically by credit card. So if we look down at this note, first we can see that if I needed to look at the treatment plan, I could simply do that from any session note. I simply select treatment plan and it shows me here are the diagnoses that I've already made. I can remove those or add a new one. Here's basic background information on the client, and then a treatment plan. Likewise, here's a case conceptualization, and there are different options. This is the ACT case conceptualization that I can access here if I choose to use that one. But I can use a general case conceptualization and write it out however I want. Finally, there's an intake interview. So my initial session where I did an initial intake interview, here are those notes if I ever want to refer back to them. You can do that from any session note. But here's the basic session note. So first, in the top left corner, we're going to look at today's agenda. And so you'll see there's already something populated there, and that's not because I entered it today, but it's because last session I wanted to remind myself to make sure that I do assess the pros and cons of him taking off work for an extended vacation. And so without me having to flip back and read my previous note, whatever I put down for next agenda, the next time I meet with the client, today's agenda is going to actually show me that, so I don't have to remember it or flip back. And that gives me the option. And when I've completed it, I simply check it off. Now, if for some reason today, once again, I don't assess the pros and cons of him taking off work, and I forget to do it, but I want to make sure that I do that next time, I can simply select this down arrow, and what it's going to do is let me copy this agenda item to next agenda. And so what I'll see on the note next week is in today's agenda, once again, that will be carried forward. And of course, if I don't want that, I can just delete that. All right, if I actually do complete this, I click check just to remind myself that it's done. The similar process occurs with homework. So here's my homework box from last week. This is what was assigned. So he was going to practice coping statements 5 out of 7 mornings. He's going to keep a mood record and arrive on time. And so I'll check in with his compliance and say, well, did you practice coping statements 5 out of 7 mornings? And he says, yes, I did 6. So I'll check that off. And what you'll see is today's homework completion will actually tabulate automatically to 33%. So that's today's, and also keeps an overall record of what he's done over the past sessions. And if I want to see that, I can actually click here, and it'll give me a table of number of homework items assigned, number completed, and compliance rate. So I check his homework. Today he completed everything, 100%. That's fantastic. And then if I look down a little further, we try to make this note as clean as possible. Really, you've got the agenda, the homework, and the notes as sort of the central features. And here I can type anything, reviewed mood record. I can type anything that I want. And it's just important that once I do, I hit save before leaving the page. If I wanted to set an agenda, though, I want to add to it today. What else I want to do? I want to make sure that I do a 2-minute meditation with the client. So let me just set an agenda real quickly. I might ask the client, what do you want to make sure that we address? And you might say, oh, it's important for me to sort of feel a little better about myself and bring up my sadness. And I might say, well, why don't I introduce the topic of behavioral activation and maybe talk about a pleasure and mastery scheduling exercise. So I add that to remind myself what's on the agenda, and I can check it off as I go and add it to the note as we potentially do those things. Now, once again, then I can assign homework. Maybe I want him to keep a mood log again, something like that. Likewise, if I want the homework to stay the same and I just want to make sure he continues these practice coping statements, I can simply click this down arrow and hit copy, and it's going to automatically be carried down to the homework, so I don't have to type it out each time. And then likewise, next session, it will show me this is what the homework that was assigned last time, so I can check off whether or not it was completed. In addition, if I want to keep track of sort of how he's improving, I can simply click on metrics, and I have the option of selecting from a pre-selected default which metrics I would like to include on this note, but I can also totally customize that and add any of my own. Now for this, I've entered weight, Beck depression inventory, Beck anxiety inventory, acceptance and action questionnaire, and the outcome questionnaire. But you can have one of these, 3 of these, 5 of these, and as I said, you completely customize that. Simply select here and check off what you want to be displayed on this particular note or not, and you'll see them show up here. Now, if I want to go ahead and enter these, I can. His weight is 174. His Beck depression score is about a 14. Is a 14. Beck anxiety score was a 20 today. The AAQ, which I don't do all the time, is a 19, and the OQ score was a 48. Okay. Now, if I want to see what that looks like over the course of therapy, I simply can click right here, and I get this nice table that certainly gives me numbers that I can interpret and analyze. But what's probably even easier is if we look at the chart. And this is going to graph all of the variables, but if that's a little cluttered to see, I can simply deselect any variable I want. So if this, I'm just looking at weight. And I just see over time, he started with me back in November at 200 pounds, and now he's moving down to around 170 in January. All right, that's how we see the metrics. So we can do all the note taking right here, just typing it out. But if we want some shortcuts, once again, we have that option in terms of interventions and symptoms. And these are customizable in the same way, but they also come preloaded. If there are some sort of general ones that we've already created for you that you want to use, you can select to use those. And you do that in practice settings. But here's what shows up for intervention. So here's some sort of general interventions. If I want to say I did assertiveness training, but I don't want to type it out, I can just check this off. Did diaphragmatic breathing and paced respiration, and maybe I use some acceptance and commitment therapy skills or dialectical behavior therapy skills today. So we clarified values and conducted a diffusion exercise. And then while we were doing the interpersonal work, talking about some communication, we did a Dear Man, all right, from DBT. And then I simply close that. In terms of symptoms, similar kind of thing. Again, these are all totally customizable. So, he reported being angry due to that interpersonal conflict where we worked on the communication, had a little bit of shame about that, and was feeling a little sad and had some depressive symptoms. Again, these are all customizable, and if we look down here, here are the general symptoms, for instance, for generalized anxiety disorder or depression. He's been reporting being depressed most days. So again, I can just check those off in terms of the note-taking if I don't feel like typing everything out, and that's stored, and all of that would be exported in the note and saved that way. All right, so those are the basic features of the note-taking. There are some additional ones, like a diagram if you would prefer to write things out freehand using a stylus. You can do that if you want to draw a genogram or an organizational chart or anything like that. So those are some other advanced features that you can use. But those are the central features of the note-taking part of the software. As always, if you have any questions or comments, we'd really like to hear from you. Feel free to reach out and contact us through the website. Hope this makes sense, and we look forward to hearing from you.